This country was not always rich. In the 1960s, it was poor, overcrowded, and had no natural resources. But fast forward to today, Singapore has become one of the wealthiest countries on earth.
Most people assumed this country would struggle. That was in 1965 when Singapore became independent. It didn't have land to grow food, it didn't have oil, it didn't have minerals, it didn't even control its own water supply. Housing was packed, jobs were limited, and the economy depended almost entirely on trade that would pass through the region.
This was a mud flat swamp. 10 years from now, this will be a metropolis.
But how? At the time, everyone thought that it would collapse, but instead, it became one of the fastest growing economies in history.
Today, Singapore's income per person is above $80,000 a year. That's higher than many European countries. Singapore has become home to major banks, tech companies, and it's now one of the busiest ports on Earth. But how does a small island end up richer than some global powers? Singapore's leaders focused on a simple idea. If doing business is difficult, well, companies will leave.
It made it insanely easy to do business here. It lowered taxes, it wiped out corruption, and invited global banks to set up shop here.
So they cut paperwork, they sped up approvals, they paid government workers fairly so that bribery would not become normal. Courts handled disputes quickly, and that gave companies confidence that contracts would be honored. See, most places build rules first and then try to attract companies. But Singapore evolved with time as companies came. Singapore saw that many governments spend more than they earn, and they decided to avoid that trap.
It saved more than it spent. While other countries piled up debt, Singapore built massive reserves for the future.
Instead of burning cash during good years, Singapore put money aside. And today, those savings are invested around the world through different funds. These savings helped Singapore during global recession and during the pandemic so that it could support workers and its people without taking on massive loans. This is basically kind of like a national safety net. Singapore is evolving to new industries.
It keeps reinventing itself. It moved from manufacturing to finance, and now it's betting on tech, biotech, and clean energy.
In the 1960s, factories created jobs. In the 1980s, banking took off. Today, Singapore is investing in semiconductor research, AI, medical labs, and renewable energy. The country pays attention to where the world is going, not where it used to be. One of the biggest initiatives Singapore has been working on for decades is bringing corporate headquarters here, or at least regional headquarters.
Where I'm standing right now is the heart of its central business district. You have the headquarters of ByteDance, the global headquarters, that's the company that owns TikTok. You also have the Asia Pacific headquarters for companies like Microsoft, LinkedIn, Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, IBM. They all sit right here in downtown Singapore.
See, when leadership teams move to a city, they also need to hire engineers, lawyers, accountants, designers, consultants, and analysts. They build offices and pay for services, and those people end up staying for years. It creates layers of jobs, not just one job. Another thing that Singapore has mastered is tourism. Tourism spreads money across hotels, restaurants, retail, nightlife, and somehow Singapore has turned it into a machine. More than 13 million tourists visit this island every year. That's more than Vietnam or the Philippines, even though Singapore is tiny. On a per-person basis, it is dominating Southeast Asia. Only Thailand brings in more tourists, but here's the twist. Singapore makes more money per visitor, with the average tourist spending around $1,300 here compared to around $800 in Thailand or $700 in Malaysia. So Singapore is earning more with fewer people. Now, obviously, Singapore is more expensive, so it makes sense here, but you can kind of see how that helps its economy. Zoom out to Asia, and it still tries to compete with giants like China or Japan, except it doesn't have a domestic tourism base to rely on. It has to import travelers, and it still works. Tourism is around 5% of Singapore's economy. It's big, but it's not totally risky. When you measure the tourist spending per square kilometer, Singapore is basically unmatched. Singapore's location makes it very attractive. So it sits on major shipping routes between India and China.
It turned its location into its advantage. It built one of the busiest ports in the world, and it became a shipping hub of Asia.
Roughly 20% of global shipping passes through Singapore. Ships refuel here, they repair here, and handle logistics here. Banks finance trade deals from here, and law firms settle shipping disputes. Trade is not just boats here, it's an entire workforce that helps fuel the economy. So because Singapore doesn't have much resources in the ground, it decided to invest in its people.
So Singapore invested in its people. It built schools, it trained workers, and it gave almost everybody affordable public housing.
Today, more than 80% of Singaporeans live in government-built housing, and these apartments are organized, safe, near transportation. Home ownership is above 90%, which gives families stability and long-term savings. Singapore's education system ranks top in reading, math, and science worldwide. Students here consistently outperform most countries. And think about that, a trained population attracts high-skilled jobs, not just factories. So to support that talent, Singapore built a network of technical schools, polytechnics, and universities that were tied to industries. Companies help shape the curriculum, so graduates are training on skills that the workforce actually needs. And when tech changes, training programs here update quickly, something that many countries struggle with. On top of that, Singapore runs ongoing retraining programs for adults, helping workers switch industries instead of getting left behind. And this focus keeps unemployment low and productivity high. Space is tight here, so Singapore has been finding ways to create more of it.
Not only did it build a ton of skyscrapers, but it also built a metro system that connected the entire city, and it also started to reclaim land to build more and more buildings.
Land reclamation has increased Singapore's land area by more than 20%. Underground tunnels move utilities and free up surface space. The metro system here keeps traffic low and the city connected. Singapore also builds parks on rooftops, offices above malls, and apartments above transit stations. This stacking approach lets more people live near jobs without spreading outward. You see green spaces everywhere here. Trees are planted strategically to lower heat and reduce energy use. There are underground pedestrian networks and entire districts cooled by centralized systems rather than individual units. And these small design choices ultimately add up to lower energy costs and more predictable infrastructure. Now, for decades, Hong Kong was the main financial gateway into China and in Asia in general, but recent political changes and stricter regulations have pushed some companies to shift teams to Singapore. Big money prefers stability. Dubai competes differently. It offers fast visas, low taxes, and a lot more space. Entrepreneurs like flexibility. Housing can be cheaper and immigration moves faster. Now, Singapore doesn't try to copy everything. Instead, it focuses on clear laws, predictable rules, and a strong legal system. For banks and investment firms, consistency matters more than lifestyle perks. Singapore avoids reacting at the last minute.
Singapore pulled all of this off through long-term strategic government planning.
Housing, transit, and job training are planned years before problems appear, so Singapore watches global trends and prepares early. And long-term planning prevents sudden shock. What's crazy about this story is that Singapore's growth happened in basically one generation.
So in just one lifetime, Singapore went from a fishing village to a global financial hub. But the only question that remains is what happens next? Can it maintain its economic growth?
There are challenges: an aging population, a low birth rate, rising housing prices, climate concerns, and just more global competition.
Can it maintain being such a wealthy country, especially in the decades to come as artificial intelligence starts to take over?
But Singapore is already adjusting. Worker retraining programs are expanding, schools are adding AI courses, and companies are testing automation.
Let me know your thoughts below. While you're at it, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next video.